There is a delicious irony in the way our governing centrists in the UK and in the EU are lamenting the Trump shock. They wax lyrical about the globalized, financialized capitalist order which they now mourn. They portray it as a golden age, a natural global system of free trade and benign capital flows. I wonder, are they truly oblivious to the facts of recent economic history? Do they not know that the grossly imbalanced, extractive, Ponzi-like financialized global capitalism, which has spawned the crisis that propelled Trump into the White House, was also birthed by a major shock, the Nixon shock? Centrists admonish the Trump boys for having turned on their allies, the Europeans, the British. But they forget that the Nixon shock was equally, if not more so, an intentionally devastating assault on Europe, on Japan, on the UK. They seem unaware that precisely because of the economic devastation caused in the 1970s and 80s, including the devastation in America's heartlands, the Nixon shock's architects, men like Paul Volcker for instance, achieved their main long-term objective: to ensure that American hegemony grew alongside America's trade and government budget deficits, not to mention on the back of financial rents earned at the expense of real value creation. Many seem puzzled today that while the European Union and Britain differ in important ways, mainly in that the European Union is running a huge surplus with the United States, while the United Kingdom remains a deficit economy. Nevertheless, our centrist regimes on both sides of the channel seem equally at a loss. There is a reason for this. Since 1971, our economies have been hooked into the same Americanocentric global surplus recycling mechanism. A mechanism whose deep crisis is steering our politics into the arms of the xenophobic ultra-right, with our electorates increasingly pummeled by nasty undercurrents fueled by the crisis of this precise global recycling mechanism that once drove Europe's and Britain's growth and relative stability. The essence of this global recycling mechanism is simple. Since the 1970s, America's deficits provided Germany, Japan, and later China the demand for their factories' manufactures. In return, the European Union, Japan, and later China sent their accumulated profits to Wall Street and to its appendage, the City of London, to be recycled within the American rentier sector, private and public debt, some equities, and of course real estate. A Chinese official once described this mechanism to me as the dark deal. Our dark deal with the Americans, he explained, turns on the United States trade deficit, which keeps demand for our manufactures high, and in return, our capitalists, Chinese capitalists, invest the bulk of their dollar super profits into America's rentier economy. That's what he said. And he concluded, once this process got underway, America shifted much of its industrial production to our shores. Now, the problem with this global recycling mechanism was that to function smoothly, it had to generate larger and larger imbalances, greater trade deficits for the United States and more accumulated rents for Northern Europe and East Asia. But there are limits to how large imbalances can grow, both in terms of the size of the trade deficits and in terms of the ratio between profits and rents. Ruptures at some point become inevitable. The longer these ruptures are delayed, the greater the pain they inflict when they come. A truth that centrists never acknowledged, not even during and after the crash of 2008 was tearing down their houses. Trump's boys have dared ask the pressing question that the centrists steadfastly refuse to countenance. What comes after the dark deal once the imbalances built on the United States trade deficit proved unsustainably massive? Now, their proposed solutions may seem wrong-headed, half-baked, even crazy, but at least Trump's team has identified the American ruling class's problem: how to maintain US hegemony in the face of America's rapid deindustrialization, with a terrific dilemma hanging over their heads. And now that financial rents are being replaced by what I call cloud rents. In contrast, UK and EU politicians are utterly out of their depth, running around like decapitated chickens, oscillating between vacuous bravado and servility to the Donald. Now, Guy Standing, my friend and colleague, suggested that today I should focus on Europe and the United Kingdom and what their response ought to be to the Trump shock. Naturally, like all of us, I could talk endlessly about this. I could, for example, recommend not just a 10% cloud tax, digital tax, by which